Hello, Align fam. I know a lot of you, if not all of you, are just as excited for summer as I am. And I want to use this opportunity as we head into summer to share the four really key and important lessons that I've learned and the group of the Align Experience learned together on June 1st. And also share a challenge, a fun summer challenge for you all, because summer's a time where we can generally speaking, slow down a little bit, enjoy yourselves, have some fun. And in this time, and I'll get into a little bit more detail about it, in this summertime is really a great opportunity for you to learn, for you to grow, and get to know yourself, your true self, more intimately. So I want to use this time to first talk about the four key things that we learned from the Align experience, which are one is the beauty and the success that can be achieved in calmness, being calm, being, not in a rush, but being more like, even keel state. Secondly, is the power and efficiency of play. Something that sounds, I think, to most of us adults, like, what? How is play efficient and how is there power behind it? We'll definitely get into that. And it's good news for us. Third is ego death and the grace of just following flow and being in flow. And the last thing is trusting yourself when it comes to feedback that you receive. Good, negative, neutral. And for each of these topics, I'm going to share a summer challenge for you guys to really enjoy and make the most out of this summer. So I didn't really share this with anybody, but I did an experiment on the Line Experience group that happened in June 1st. So for context, I've done almost half a dozen of these Align experiences. It's usually an annual event, but this is the first year where I did an encore given the demand. People really want to come back again. And so I had my own personal journey of, I would say, slowing down, being more in flow, and not forcing things. I think growing up all the way to like when I was young, all the way to as an adult now in my 30s, I've always thought like overdoing, overachieving, overproducing, that's how you're being efficient, right? You constantly have to act and do and create and move along in order to, be of value to people. And I was going through this social experiment on myself, which I've also then implemented on a lot of my coaching clients. And I thought, wait a minute, I have a Line experience to plan in like 2 months. Why don't I actually experiment with this group and try a more softer, calmer way of expressing and creating the content for this Align experience, and let's see the difference in results, right? So nobody knew I was doing this, and we'll share the results at the end. Nobody knew I was doing this. And I think I'm very lucky, and I know I'm very fortunate where I don't use the same curriculum for every single experience because A, it's boring for people who come back, and a lot of people come to multiple events. Secondly, it's also boring for me. Like, I don't really learn anything new by like literally copy and pasting the content and what I'm going to say and the games we're going to play at every experience. I know it's probably much more efficient and time saver in a way, and it's easier to copy and paste. But for me, I have not found it rewarding for my guests or myself. And so every single time I do it, I also customize the games, the topics, and the themes based on the group coming. So when people hear of stories or the games we play, people are like, wait a minute, didn't I tell Jess, like, wait a minute, this sounds like something that I've been through, right? Obviously, things always stay anonymous. Like, no one knows, like, the scenarios that we kind of talk through who went through it. But it is all the events and things, all the games that we play are inspired by real life events that people have been through or what they're kind of struggling with. And here's my solution. And here is a guide that I've come up with to help people get through different types of topics. So with that said, I really wanted the format of this Align experience to be, I would say, just much more calm and chill. So the one in February was go, 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 like 5 sessions, barely any breaks, lots of content. And while the common feedback was people got a lot from it and they loved the content, The issue was a lot of people felt like it was a bit rushed. And especially for my session, I was honestly cramming in a lot of content where we didn't have as much time to share with the group. Like I would give people a prompt or give people an activity. We didn't have time to really go through every single one and leave room for people to share and debrief. And that's like the nugget, and we'll get to that. That's like the really important part of learning, right? It's not just hearing from someone speak, like a speaker sitting up to speak. It's hearing people's stories, what they've been through, how they've gone through it. Because it makes us feel so much less alone. And I know we've been hearing it everywhere, but like we, as connected as we are on these devices, we've been the most alone and lonely ever in human history, right? So first is when you share these stories and you don't feel like you're such like alone, there's a sense of community. B is you learn from people's actions, right? Whether you learn, okay, that's something I want to do and copy, or that's something that I actually don't ever want to do. So that's something that I've noticed this time from the last event that I was like, I absolutely need to slow this one down. So the format this time was we have a intimate session. People would rotate. There's intimate session. We get a break where you get to meet your matches, like a 30-minute break. And then you get a session and then a break. So it was much more easy, much more flowing. And even like my tone and my demeanor was less like rah rah and like, getting you hyped up. It was a much more, I would say, soft girl era. Like we talked about things in a very fun, playful way, but it was not intense in any means. So that was like the biggest experiment and change that I did in for this Align experience. So how did it translate? Right, that's the important thing. Um, so when it came, before we get into like the results and what people thought, even when it came to planning the event, from like the content, the speakers, the event partners, the guests I was interviewing, I was much more relaxed and less stressed planning this one because I was so stressed and so overwhelmed doing the one in February that I learned I'm like, this is not sustainable. Like I literally pushed myself through, like there were nights where I would sleep 2 hours, 2 to 4 hours max. And I was just running on adrenaline and cortisol. And obviously that's not good for my body. And when I decided to do this, the encore, my body was in burnout. And I didn't even recognize it until I literally had to sit with myself. I was like, wow, like I'm exhausted. I'm tired. My digestion was getting off. There's just so many signs of imbalance in my body that I'm like, okay, well, I've committed to do this. Let's do this in a more sustainable route. And so when it even came to planning and everything, like I wasn't very much like it has to go this specific way. I need to have this specific person. I was very much of showing up. Of course, I took action and I took inspired action, meaning if something about someone was like, they give me a really good vibe. I think they'd be a really good fit for event. Let me invite them to the Align experience. There was a clear like feeling, a gut feeling I had about the person. I'm like, they'd be great to be included into this group. That's when I send out that invite, right? And when people applied, same thing, it was very much more intentional in terms of like screening is always intentional, but like pairing people up, it was much more going by like a deeper gut feel than like the science of like what people say they want and what people like really want to get out of a relationship or business connection or friendship. It was a lot more of that intuition element to it. And then even when it came to like getting guest speakers, right? Like there are people that I felt like it didn't really feel 100% aligned. I didn't try to force it. I was like, you know what? Let's reconvene next time. And I actually made space for the right person and the right speakers to come on. And the same thing happened with partners, right? Things were a lot more seamless and smooth. And honestly, it felt like things just fell into my lap. This was the most stress-free a lot experience I've ever planned. And actually, any event I've ever planned, any event ever. And things actually turned out better, and we'll get there. So I think I start off with like everything starts with the energy that you put out and how you handle yourself and how you show up. And I think because I showed up in a much more calm, solution based, not forced way, things just fell into my lap. And when things fell out, I just trusted it wasn't supposed to work out this way. Maybe I had a vision, I wanted this specific thing, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's a million other ways to, get an event done. So that's just a backdrop in terms of planning it and getting up to speed. Um, so getting into like having again, the event was much more of a calmed, relaxed paced. Over 90%, I think it was like 93 or 94% of the guests that came to the June event and the February event, over 90% of them said they liked this one, June 1st, the more relaxed, calm paced one, way more. Like way more, right? The other sub 10%, it was a tie. And we'll dive a little bit deeper what that tie was, or like they really couldn't like decide which one was better or worse. They just thought it was pretty equal. So over 90%. And the common feedback that I got was much more chill, more relaxed pace, and more time for people to digest. It was much more mingling and interaction. So people really had one-on-one dedicated time to meet their matches. That's not something we had at the last event. Last event was like, all right, y'all are grown adults, find each other. But I think the feedback there is sometimes, well, not sometimes, people that come to Len Experience are very kind. They're polite. They're not rude. They don't like to like interrupt people. So when people met their say first match, they felt comfortable and they stuck with their match through breaks. And it was hard for like other people that were matched with these two to kind of go in and say like, hey, like also want to get to know you and chat, right? So this time was much more relaxed, and people felt like they had the opportunity to meet the people that they were either paired up with and then have time to meet everybody else as well. Music to my ears. And I think the biggest thing I've learned there is like, you don't need to follow a strict schedule, right? I think it's so important. And I think back on anything that like I've ever achieved or anything that any of us has ever achieved, right? Most of it is like we had a vision or we had a goal. And the more detail you have in it, of course it's better because it makes it real, right? Like it makes it very real what you want to achieve. But I think what I've learned from this experience is when you're flexible, like I may have a vision this big, right? And to me, it's like amazing. But real life wants to grant me more, and the outcome is this. So go with it. Like stop being so tied with like getting like a nickel when you can be getting Benjis, right? So that was a really big lesson learned from the actual experience. And I'll give you an example. This is the first time, and I'll get into more detail about it, that I added improv, and I'll explain why I added it. And it was supposed to be an hour. It blew another hour. So it was 2 hours long, and it cut like naturally two sessions of later sessions. And this time around, I didn't try to force us to wrap up faster. I didn't try to like micromanage the schedule the way I did last time, right? Like last time I was like, okay, gotta pump out this content. People are coming, they're spending a lot of time and their energy and their money to come here. I need to pump out content and give a lot of value, right? And I felt like the value was in content. Versus this time, it's an event, it's an experience. People are here to experience the time together. It's extremely difficult for anyone that throws events understands to get the people, especially specific people that you want, because you have to match them up in a room. So the magic is in the connections and the dialogue amongst the people. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to let this improv blow as long as it needs. I didn't rush the pace, kept it going. And I even had a friend said to me like, wow, I was really surprised how cool you kept it, because we debriefed after, given the fact that we blew literally an hour of other content, and how people went off script and you didn't freak out. Like the beauty is not in script. The beauty is in the creativity and how I love the fact that everyone got into it, right? So I think the lesson there is flow with life. And when you have this small little vision and things seem to go out of hand because it's expanding, it's bigger, right? The people were having more fun. People were really getting into the script. People were adding their own flair. It's more. Go with it, right? Life's trying to grant you more. So be thankful, be appreciative for it, and recognize the beauty in receiving. when life wants to give. So that was a beautiful thing. And so my summer challenge when it comes to really embracing the beauty and success and calmness, my summer challenge for all of you is, where can you enable more flow in your life? Where are you holding on too tight and you're just like, it has to be this way, it has to be this way? Where can you let go more in your life? And where can you trust yourself more that you're going to achieve the thing that you want to achieve, whatever that is? And in that state of trusting and knowing, then act, right? Because when you act when you're flustered and you're not sure, or you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to get this, that like scattered energy, you're going to get scattered results, right? Versus if you know it's yours, like it's this inner confidence, like you know you're going to achieve it, and you will. You're going to put in the effort, you're going to put in the time, you're going to be open to magic. You're going to get it. So when you operate in that sense of knowing, deep knowing, how could you do that better? And where can you do that better in your life? So that's my summer challenge for you. And I encourage you, because obviously habits take time to build, I encourage you to journal this on a weekly basis at minimum. Daily, great, but journal it weekly of like where you can let go more, where you can trust yourself more, and where you can act in a sense of like knowing you're going to achieve the thing versus this constant state of stress, right? So how can you allow more ease in your life? That's my first challenge for you. Now let's move on to the next topic. Play. Oh, my favorite topic. So I've always had this feeling, and not feeling, it has always been true for me just from life experience and from mine, for people I coach, from like literally anything from being a child all the way up to being adult. Play is how we learn best, right? For people, most people do not learn best by like sitting there listening to someone taking notes, like so boring, you want to fall asleep. The regular way we learn the school system, the American school system, is just not the best way, right? For even if you're a studious person and you like this format, it is so boring, it is so mind numbing. It's not the best way we retain information. That's why when we go to school we always had to study, and at least a lot of us did, I did, study and memorize over and over and over and over again, right? Because you're not fundamentally understanding the concepts when you just sit there and listen to someone talk, right? That's how I've learned. So that's how I've always created experiences or activities, or even when I coach with my clients, I make it more interactive and I make it more real life, because you really learn in life through experiences, like whether it's from your own, whether it's from other people's. Why do we like watching TV? Why do we watch movies, right? Like it's all experiences. You learn so much from people. So, when it comes to line experience, I'm like, well, the best of people to learn is to play, is to interact. So, for those of you who like need a hard science data to back it up, well, research has come out literally last year. Dr. Karen Purvis has said, like, and scientists have done research on this, that it takes about 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain, to create a new track so you can get more familiar with the habit, unless it's done through play, which only takes about 10 to 20 repetitions. I mean, music to our adult ears, right? So for all of us who've grown up thinking like, oh, it's such a waste of time to play. Oh, like, such a waste of time to like figure out my creative pursuits or keep having my hobby. No, it's not. That's how you learn, right? And the more, and for all of you out there who are like managers and your CEOs and you're, managing a team of any title, even like if you're like, I don't know, a social group, right? If you want people to learn something, make it fun, make it interactive, and have them play. So that's the biggest thing that I really wanted to infuse even deeper for this Alana experience. I wanted June 1st to be a little bit more chill, but more fun and playful and lighthearted, right? So, of course, that meant that I had to put in something fun to do, which is improv. So let's talk about that, right? When it came to people's favorite activity of all the things we've done, so there was 3 different sessions and we had multiple different activities during each of the sessions. People loved improv the best. right? And let me tell you, right, it wasn't like I knew it was going to be a complete hit. So for context, I was supposed to have a different guest speaker and session leader come, and him and I were going to role play the scenarios, do the improv, because we have the script, we went through it. There's points we would want to hit for every single improv, because the whole point is we had about 8 to 10, about 10 scenarios that I wanted to play out in front of the group live, so that we can talk about the deeper topics when it came to like money mindset, when it came to building healthy relationships, romantic relationships, when it came to self-confidence and self-worth, and really going after the things that you want in life, right? There's certain points I really want to hit. And I thought, well, like if we're going to do improv, I should have someone who understands a point in the scenarios deeper, right? Unfortunately, scheduling didn't work out where the gentleman was actually double booked, so he couldn't make the event. And I was sitting there like, well, I still really want to do improv. I think it's a great way for people to learn. I don't know how it's going to go. And I remember talking to a friend about this. I was like, do you think people are going to be able to like read a bullet point and just like bullet points of a scenario and like perform off the fly? And he was like, he's like, I really don't think there should be an issue. If you ever need people, because he's like, the biggest concern would be people would be shy and not want to come up on stage. He's like, you could always like pre-plant people to make sure like you at least have one or two volunteers per activity. And I was like, you know what? Again, I slept on it. I trusted my gut. In the morning, I was like, wing it. Let's do it. Like I've been wanting to do this improv thing. How hard can it be for people to, do it up on stage? And if people have nerves, get shy, I'm like, I'll find a way to bring them out of their shell, right? But I really didn't know how it was going to go, because honestly, I think the event attracts a lot of extroverts, but I would say even more, I would say ambiverts or introverts, because these are people that are really more like self-reflective. They really want to make genuine relationships. They're not always out there, socializing and partying. They're really like selective how they spend their time. So they're not always out there making social connections with strangers, right? So that was one thing I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I was like, screw it. We're doing it. It's going to be fun. So I wrote up scenarios again based on what the group was going through. So there was an emotional connection to it. And people got so into it. Like literally the self-proclaimed shy people. Oh my Lord. There are points we were all bursting out laughing. It was hilarious to the point where there's a certain scenarios that some people took it way too far, that I couldn't even talk about the key points that were going to go down, but it doesn't matter. It was fun. There's other things that we learned from it. And I think what was really helpful was again, laughing and playing, right? People who were in the roles actively were active. People who were in the audience, they were also actively watching a live show and learning. And then after every scenario, I would pause and debrief and said, what went well? What could have been better? Let's talk about it, right? We learned so much. I learned so much from how people think, how like the different perspectives, and how it's tainted obviously about what each person and guest has gone through in their past, right? So it was a complete hit. I'm absolutely going to bring it back. People loved it. And I think it was fun because it was effective, because people didn't realize that they were actually learning while they were giggling and having fun and whatever. And in the last, now it's been like almost 2 weeks, I'm getting texts, I'm getting messages being like, I had this nugget, this came up to me. I'm like, that improv scenario actually inspired me to do this. So there's a lot of residual effects, because when you're playing, you're learning more deeply versus like being a robot memorizing. And it's like one side of your brain in, one side of your brain out. So that was something that, I mean, the test was, do we learn through play? And 150% we learned through play. That was amazing. And so the other thing that this improv also got us to really think about and consider, and I don't even say improv, like the other activities. So we also blindfolded people and paired people up, and they had to guess who they spoke to based on the conversation and the mindset. And it really got people to be more open-minded about people who they normally wouldn't speak with, right? People who say romantically weren't normally their type. Once they took off their blindfold, they're like, oh, wow, I would have never expected to really connect with someone if, in that way, right? It got people to be more open-minded with people from different industries and backgrounds. It got people to really reflect on, ways of living that they want to adopt from the other guests and reflect on like what they want to do with their life, how they can improve it. So I think people were much more open-minded given the games. And again, it came from play. Right. I can sit there and tell you to be open minded, but that's not going to do anything. You got to experience it on your own and realize, oh, what happens when I judge a book by its cover and I make you, because it's part of the game, and then you get blindfolded, and then you're pleasantly surprised by who's sitting across from you. And the conversation's actually, you're really connected. It's actually really deep and rewarding. So that's something that I'm really big on. That's easy, right? So for your summer challenge, let's talk about play. So a summer challenge for everyone is, how can you include more play, wonder, and awe in your life, right? And I always say to everybody, and I tell it to all my clients, all my close friends, anyone that asks me like, hey, how do you, maintain a healthy mindset? How are you always so positive? How do you, like bounce back? Because like everyone has good and bad days, but like I don't stay down there, right? So like, what do? I have a routine. It's on another episode. You guys can find it on this podcast, of like my morning and night routine. But one thing I always do every single day is I make an hour of play for myself, whatever that means for me. It could be dancing. It could be catching up with a friend. Could be like meeting a new potential client that I really want to learn and meet from as well. Like it could be anything that I consider fun. But it has to be, I would say, it shouldn't be productive, right? Like, for example, if you don't really like going to the gym, I wouldn't say the hour at the gym is your playtime. Playtime is when you're being carefree, you're laughing, you're enjoying, you're in flow. So for the summer, I encourage every single one of you to infuse an hour of play every single day and start tracking, right? On a daily basis or on the weekly, if you can remember it, write down like the things you did for play and how it made you feel, and see the progress in your mindset, right? And how open you are, the energy level that you have, right? The thing about play, it makes you more energetic. Like after recess, you're like, okay, I'm ready to learn. Before recess, not so much, right? So that's my summer challenge when it comes to play for all of you. So commit an hour of playtime every single day for this summer. The third topic I want to talk about is ego death. So I am someone that historically has been much more of a control freak than not. And I am very detail oriented, which is a good thing, but it also has flaws, right? There's a time and place for everything. And there's a time and place to be detail oriented. When you're planning something, when you're putting together a proposal, presentation, like all that stuff's important. And then there's the orientedness that causes you to really sweat the small stuff when it doesn't freaking matter. And I found myself really getting so worked up on details that didn't matter. And it came from my ego, right? It came from like, why did this person answer me? It's been X amount of days. Why is it still not done yet? Like, it's not that difficult. Why is it not being prioritized? Or, why is this like a partner like not enthusiastic to come on board for this? Like, there's so many things that I tie to the ego, meaning like, it doesn't really matter, honestly, if it works out or not. It's just a detail, right? If this partner doesn't want to work on with us for this event, I'll find someone else. It's like not a big deal. Okay, someone didn't answer email up in 3 days. I can follow up. Maybe like have more grace, right? Maybe someone was going through something. Maybe someone's super busy and they read the email and they forgot to respond. It happens all the time. So this this Align experience, planning it, the event itself, really made me reflect on the ways I like used to sweat the small stuff and not to do that anymore, because it added more unnecessary stress and it wasn't the most productive thing. And also things always freaking work out, right? It was much more focused on the solutions. And I always say that you got to trust the detours. There are no rejections. Everything's just, it's just a redirection. It's a reroute, right? So instead of keeping banging on a door, when the door wasn't opening or just cracking, there were so many other doors that were open or willing to be open, right? And those doors actually were like effortless. I didn't need, I remember like onboarding one of the event partners who like literally were like, yeah, totally. We'd love to do this. I'm like, do you know anything about the event? You want me to like walk you there? Like, no, I mean, you can if you want. It was like the weirdest and most awesome thing I've ever experienced, but it's not questioning again when life wants to bless you or grant you ease. Like, take it with two hands, right? When things are easy, it doesn't mean it's not valuable. I think sometimes, a lot of times, we get told like, oh, like things are only worth it if it's hard to obtain. And like when it comes to love, when it comes to job opportunities, when it comes to anything, right? Like, oh, or that's so expensive, so it must be of such high value. Not always true, right? Sometimes you need to ask yourself, like, wow, things are so easy and flowing because it's so aligned. Wow, things are so easy with this guy because we're very compatible, right? And it shouldn't be a struggle to like spend time with someone who you want to make your life partner, right? So I would say just really reflect on the times where ego holds you back and you keep thinking, well, it has to be this way, it should be this way. It doesn't have to be anyway, right? It is the way that it is, right? And be open to things again being better than what you imagine in your head. And then an ego, so giving really life grace and breathing room, being the patience that came from this event plan, planning this event and actually going about it was super helpful and healing. And we also this time incorporated breath work, which I knew for a fact that we as a group, humanity, but we as a group coming, a lot of type A, super left brain people would need breath work and be introduced to it or be reminded of it, right? Not gonna lie, I was again very nervous because even I've had people who have done breath work and done like holotropic breath work, which is a much more spiritual experience, meaning you see downloads, you feel certain sensations that like are not explainable in any way. It's completely just like a spiritual vision, right? Or I've had people say that holotropic breath work has gave them the same visions and the results as when they were on mushrooms, like psychedelics, right? So I've had people who've done this type of breath work and they still were like, oh, I don't believe in spirituality. Like, oh, like I need science to back things up, whatever, right? So I was a little bit nervous at first because we had an hour and I really didn't want the session leader to spend so much time getting too in depth in the science. I want her to talk about it, why it's been reintroduced. It's not newly created, created in India, I mean, thousands of years ago, right? But why it was introduced, you know, the purpose of it, the science behind it. But I was a little bit nervous of like, are people going to get it? Are they going to think this is like outrageous? Have I gone too far in spirituality and people won't understand the benefits of it, right? Again, this was one of people's most favorite exercises. When I asked, so in the survey, I asked everyone when they leave, which session positively surprised you the most? Breath work was one of the top ones there, if not the top one. I think it was tied with another one. And people were the most positively surprised by that, right? And I mentioned this because breath work, for those of you who haven't done it before, especially holotropic, it really gets you, speaking of ego death, it gets you to take off the mask and layers of protection of saying, I'm fine, everything's great, I'm great. And it really gets you back into like your core of like, how are you? What have you been holding? What have you not let your body feel or process when it comes to emotion events, right? Because your body always keeps score, right? Your mind can run around and be like, I'm good, moving on. Your body, until you let that body feel the whole process, like feel the whole process of grief, feel the whole process of happiness, feel the whole process of shock and anger or whatever, it gets stored in your body. So what breath work does, it basically gets you, instead of using your like monkey brain and your logical brain to constantly think, it shuts that down gets you to your higher brain and puts you in a parasympathetic um, state, which is when you're in a calm, relaxed, not flight or fight state. So your body feels safe to go to the higher brain. And then you feel your body, what's still left over, right? And the reason why we hold on to a lot of these things is the ego. The ego wants to keep us safe. The ego wants to protect and defend. The ego wants to just keep us alive, right? But like, we don't want to just survive, we want to thrive. And so I was really, really positively like surprised and happy that people got it, loved it. I mean, people were crying, people opened up about things that they never opened up about to anybody, not even a group. But people felt so safe and held and seen in this group that we put together. And so I was so happy to see that. And from that spark, I call it spark. All these online experiences, it's not meant to like you leave like a whole new person. Like it's 6 hours, right? It takes a lot more work on yourself. And I would say really doing the work, really working on yourself, really reflecting to see the full results. But what I want is I want that spark. I want you to start thinking about things differently. I want you to start reflecting on the areas that you know you need to work on. I want you to start reflecting on the people you need to like let into your life, right? Or let love into your life. So I was really happy that it got people to pinpoint what's still held in their body, what's still bothering them. So that was great. And that way, when you pinpoint it, the ego can slowly die because you're aware of it. Otherwise, the ego can hide behind, like, I'm just protecting you, I'm just keeping you alive. But again, we don't want to survive, we want to thrive. So that was amazing. So great to see. And my summer challenge for you for the ego death is what annoyances that you can let go of that are really not serving you. It just gets your blood to boil for like stupid reasons that don't matter in the grand scheme of life. It could be an annoying coworker. It could be a really aggressive neighbor. It could be your commute, right? It could be anything. And I want you to think about how you can practice self-awareness and remind yourself people are going to react how they're going to react. And that's, if they want to go into anger, they're going to pain their own body and they're going to suffer the toxins of the anger. And that's their own choice, right? But your reaction and your actions determines what you experience and what you feel, right? And what state you're going to be in. Do you want to drag yourself down to them just because they were rude to you or they annoyed you? Or can you practice that self-awareness to say, okay, that's where Jenny's vibrating, maybe she had a bad day, whatever. Maybe she's had some trauma still stuck in her body. We don't know what, but I don't want to go there with her because it knocks me off my shine. I don't want to go down there. Practicing self-awareness. So think about your daily annoyances. And also I would say, try to remove annoyances. Like, for example, your alarm when you wake up. Is it like this crazy, like drill sergeant of a ringtone where you're like immediately waking up in stress? Doesn't sound like that's the best way to start the day, right? Could you change your ringtone to something more softer, right? If you're always, late to things, can you literally bucket an extra 15-minute window and force it on yourself? What are some things that you can remove to really create some more, like I would say, space between your appointments, between your commutes? That's been a game changer for me. So make yourself easy and remove annoyances. And when you can't remove annoyances, like you can't remove your coworker, let's not do that. Let's be nice. How can you set boundaries with the person, and also energetic boundaries where you're like, I'm just not going to go down with you, right? So that is my summer challenge when it comes to the ego death for you. And the last topic and the last key thing that we've learned from the line experience is feedback. Okay. So I've always been, and I always will be, a big fan of feedback. I've grown up that way. I think when I started my career, given like the company that I started off, we were just 360 feedback. We were all about feedback and all about like making sure everyone around you loves working for you. And like literally we were compensated based on like, well, not all of it, let's be honest, partly from this like 360 review, right? So you always just want to make sure you're getting like positive feedback from everybody. What I've learned from this experience is that you need to be very clear on the feedback that is yours to take home and you agree with it, you think it's something constructive and you can benefit yourself and that you're whoever you're going to deal with after from it, then you take it on. But then you also have to separate from feedback that you don't agree with, you don't think it's productive, and it's actually a projection of the other person, right? Because feedback is one person's read of an event or a situation, right? If you don't agree with where this person is coming from, like maybe they're coming from an energy where like, let's say they have a more like a cheap mindset, right? And for them, if they have a very cheap mindset, they're going to nitpick on every little thing and literally do like, I don't know, an ROI analysis over every little detail. And, but you have to ask yourself, it's like, was the punishment or the crime equal to like the feedback that you were getting, right? So if someone with a very cheap or lack mindset, they're going to like really have high expectations for every little detail they invest in or they put their money into, right? And you have to ask yourself, so with that backdrop, and they have, say, not the best feedback for you, do you agree with it? I would say I think the biggest thing I've learned from this experience, especially compared to last time as in February, I remember maybe slept 3 hours and I was like, after the event, after the after party, I woke up, I started aggressively reading the feedback, nitpicking every detail. Like if everything wasn't like a 10 to 10 all across, like I would get upset. And if there was any type of like criticism, and it was most of it was constructive, I'd be like, why would they think that? Okay, how could I do better? How could I whatever? Now, and to be fair, there was a lot of very helpful feedback, which is why we were able to create a better, like more fun and stress-free format. But now I'm like, when I read the feedback, I was like, agree, definitely adapt. Don't really understand, let me follow up. Don't agree, not going to use it. I think it's so important, especially as someone who's very growth minded. It's so natural for us to ask everyone for their opinion about what did you think? How was it? But to remind yourself, people like come from different places. And even if everyone has the best intention for you, their reality and their expectations of life are going to be very different from yours, right? So I would say ultimately when it comes to feedback, be open to feedback, but more discerning of what you're going to take in and what is yours to take versus what is actually projection of the person giving you the feedback, right? And I think this time I was so calm reading the feedback. I mean, to be fair, both times was positive, like it was overall very, very positive. But as someone who was so, again, nitty gritty, stuck on details, this time I was like, I don't think I'm going to take that. It's not going to be productive. Appreciate the thought, not the best idea. I'm not going to take that. That sounds cool. I want to follow up on it. So I think that's really important. And I think for their summer challenge is what feedback you get that you know does not resonate with you, right? Like, for example, I remember one time a former manager when I was younger was like, Jess, I really want you to work on, like, I want you to work on like executive presence or something like that, right? I'm sitting there like, pretty sure I've given really good presentations. And I'm able to explain very complicated finance topics to people who have no finance background when I cover family offices. I was like, I've never gotten complaints about like my delivery, my presentation style. Like I've never had that. If anything, it's the opposite. If anything, it's people was from a finance perspective are surprised given my age. Like my age doesn't match my ability to deliver more complicated topics in a very calm manner, right? In a very, I would say manner that actually engages you to listen, right? So I was in there, I was like, okay, but at the time I was like, I'm always open to feedback. Maybe there's something to it, maybe it's something that I should be more reflective on, right? And now I look back and I'm like, no, I don't think so at all. And I think back and I look at the person giving the feedback. I was like, do I think she's a really good presenter? Do I think she's executive presence? And I was like, well, she's definitely less expressive than I am. She's less emotive. She's more robotic, and that's her style. But like, I don't want to be that. Like, what makes me good at getting people to understand very complicated concepts quickly is that I'm engaging. People want to listen. I'm emotive. I can get people to laugh. And I don't want to lose that about me. That's what makes me different. That's my gift. And so I share that because no matter who gives you feedback, right? You need to be very clear and know yourself enough to say what feedback I get that I'm like, this is not for me. Dump it. That's your summer challenge. And then what feedback you get, and it's hard to digest, but they're right, right? And I of course had those too. And it is absolutely your job in your summer challenge to work on it. So come August, end of month, you are in a noticeably better state when it comes to your feedback. And so that's a summer's challenge. And I recalled earlier, I mentioned, the about 90% who said this event was better than the last one in February. About less than 10% said that it was like even between the two, and why specifically. It was content. So there were a smaller percentage who really loved the breadth in content because we powered through a lot, and it really made people think and question. The format was, what are your gifts? What are like things that come true to you and then you're good at and you can hold on to those skills? What's your dream life? Like throwing out what your parents and family society tells you should have. What is your dream life? And then we literally create a roadmap of how we get there. And it was within an hour. So obviously it was a lot of work to get into it. So I think that also positively surprised me. Where I've learned in my personal takeaway is, you have something to say, you have a message, you want to help, don't be afraid of it. And I think this time I did intentionally cut down the content so we could have more improv, we can have more fun. It was very pleasant to hear that people actually really enjoyed me just standing up there and speaking to the group. So going forward, what I'm going to do for the next event is we're going to add back deeper content, but I'm going to space it out. So I give a point or prompt, whatever, and then give everyone time to share it or like work with a partner in a group and really have that full experience, and still have improv and have all the breakouts, but which means we're gonna have to make it longer. And it seems like that's a common feedback I always get. It's not enough time. I wanted more time. So you guys win. I hear the feedback. It will be longer. So it'll be like 7 hours of content and play and all that fun stuff before the after party. So those are the 4 key things that I want you to take away from the summer that we've all learned together at the Line Experience. And to recap, it's really embracing the beauty and success from calmness. Secondly is the power and efficiency of play. Third is ego death and the power of just being in flow, the grace of being in flow. And lastly is trusting your judgment and trusting yourself when it comes to feedback. So enjoy the start of summer and stay tuned. We're going to have a little bit more fun next topics. You will see, and I'll be filming in a new fun location as well. So get ready for some beach vibes.